This season, Northland has launched a boatload of jigs, just an absolute ton of them. And in this video, we're gonna walk through all of them real quick. I'm gonna touch on the high points and when you're gonna wanna be using these jigs. First, we have the brand new Tungsten jigs. Tungsten is really awesome. It's a lot denser than lead. So essentially what you're getting is you're getting a heavier jig in a smaller profile. And these have been absolute walleye killers for me this past season. We put out some content already catching fish on these jigs, and this is gonna be a mainstay in my box for years to come. Next, we have a fresh addition to a classic lineup, and that is the Weedless Fireball and the Weedless Stand-Up Fireball. And these are just great little jigs for a bunch of different species, and where I like to use these specifically is I like to throw a minnow on there, a leech on there, and the fact that they're weedless means you're gonna have less snags. That means they're great in weed fishing situations and also around rocks. Next up, we have the brand new Gumball jigs, and what these jigs are gonna be great for, these are gonna be your bang for your buck jigs. So if you like to go out fishing in places where you might lose one or two rigs, you know, whether that's river fishing situations, or maybe if you like to drag minnows or leeches right over the tops of rocks and you get snagged up or you get cut off by zebra mussels, that's where these come in handy in my arsenal, is when I know I'm gonna be going through a lot of jigs. These are good, solid jigs that come in a bunch of different sizes and colors. So the Gumball jig is another good option. Next up, on that same Gumball platform, they have a bunch of really good pre-rig options. If you're the kind of person that likes to use plastics, they have a paddle tail swim bait, they have a minnow, and they also have a grub, which is one of my personal favorites. They got a bunch of different really cool colors, and this particular lineup, the pre-rigged options, come in a 1/4 ounce, an 1/8 ounce, or a 16th ounce size. So you have a bunch of different sizes for different species, whether you want to chase walleyes or bass or pike, or if you want to go down to that 16th ounce size and maybe throw it for crappies, that's another really good option too. So these rigged gumballs are really cool and you should have them in your tackle box. The next handful of jigs that I'm going to cover are all a part of Northland's new Elite Series line of jigs, and essentially what that means is they all have premium Gamakatsu hooks on them. And we're going to start off right here with the MVP jig, which is a jig that I've used quite a bit this past year. It has the Gamakatsu Big River hook, which is a big, tough hook that works great for a lot of different situations. For me, where this bait really shines is when you're gonna be using big minnows or really big, bulky plastics. It comes in some heavier sizes, so you also have the ability, to fish it in deep current and river fishing situations, stuff like that. And the shape of the head is really cool as well. It's really lifelike. It kind of looks like a little bit of a creature in the front there. So the MVP jig is a killer. Next up, we have the Elite Series Mimic jig and the Mimic swim jig. And these baits might look a little bit similar, but they are quite different. The Mimic swim jig has that thicker hook that's gonna be ideal for throwing big swim baits, and the Mimic jig is more of a fluke bait for me. It's a really killer moping bait if you've ever tried that, but also just ripping flukes through the weeds. That's where that particular jig is really good, whether you're chasing bass or walleyes. Both of these options are gonna be great for different applications. Next up, we got the Elite Series Cabbage Crusher, and this bait comes in handy exactly when you think it would, when you're fishing through cover, whether that's weeds, rocks, trees, sticks, stumps, stuff like that, places where you don't want to get hung up. And it's got the titanium weed guard, which is ideal for fishing through those situations. It's the same setup that you'll see on the other weedless jigs that we talked about in this video. And this particular bait has a really good hook, super ideal for rigging up plastics and pulling them through the weeds. It comes in a number of different sizes, all the way down to a 3/16, which is really great if you're trying to fish it over the top, glide it over the top of weeds. That's where I really like to use this bait. So the Cabbage Crusher is one you got to check out. Next up, we have the Elite Series Finesse football head, and this is a really versatile jig that I've used in a bunch of different situations. Based on the shape of its head, it actually travels really well over rocks and gravel and kind of walks through rocks and stuff like that better than your traditional round head. And it also has a finesse hook, so based on the name Finesse football head, the hook is actually really good for using more finesse plastics. So this is a really great versatile bait that you can use in a bunch of different situations because it comes in a bunch of different sizes. On the bottom end you have a 3/16, and on the top you have a 3/8, which is a lot better for fishing in deeper waters. So the Finesse football head is definitely one you gotta have in your arsenal. Next up we have the Nedster jigs. Now Ned rigging has become extremely popular for a bunch of different species. It started off kind of being like a big bass thing, but now it's getting really popular in the walleye fishing world as well. And Northland has a bunch of really cool new Ned jigs. They have the Nedster and the Weedless Nedster, and this is just a perfect shape, ideal size. It's got that Elite Series Gamakatsu hook. It's got all the really good colors that you look for in a Ned jig, whether it's more of those natural colors or the brighter chartreuse. Last up, if any of you are into wacky fishing, Senkos or stick baits, you know that it can be a really effective tactic. It works really good in the weeds until you get snagged up in some thick coontail or cabbage or anything like that. And that's where the Weedless wacky jig really comes into handy. It's got that premium Gamakatsu hook like we talked about earlier, but this is more of a wacky style hook. And then it's got a jig head to kind of help it work down through those weeds, you know, down into the rocky areas, maybe for fishing down in the depths. And so you have a better drop speed than, you know, if you're just fishing weightless and it takes a long time to get down there. But it has the right hook and it has the titanium weed guard, which is gonna be ideal for getting through cover. So that's just another good option, and that's actually the last one we have here on the list for Northland's new jigs. It's like I said before, this is a big giant pile, a big giant boat full of baits. So hopefully you got some good information in this piece. Hopefully you're able to make some better, more informed buying decisions and pick up a few baits that'll help you catch a few more fish this next upcoming season.